Jonathan's boots echoed through the crystalline corridors of the Galactic Academy, each step deliberate and measured. The prestigious institution floated in geosynchronous orbit above the planet Zentara 7, hosting the children of diplomats, merchants, and politicians from 47 different species. His daughter Nevaeh had been attending for 6 standard months, and this was his first opportunity to visit during the midday meal period. The cafeteria doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a massive chamber that could easily accommodate 3,000 students. The architectural design was typical Zentaran, all flowing curves and bioluminescent panels that shifted colors based on ambient noise levels. Jonathan's eyes scanned the crowd, searching for his daughter's familiar dark hair and bright smile. He found her sitting alone at a corner table. The sight made something cold settle in his chest. Around her, clusters of alien students laughed and shared meals. Thexian younglings with their chitinous plates gleaming, Vorash adolescents floating in their anti-gravity harnesses, even a group of crystalline quarite children refracting light in rainbow patterns. But surrounding Nevaeh was an empty buffer zone, as if an invisible force field kept everyone at least 3 meters away. Jonathan watched as a Thexian student approached the table, carrying a tray laden with nutrient paste. The young alien glanced at Nevaeh, then abruptly changed direction, choosing instead to sit with their own kind across the cafeteria. His daughter's shoulders slumped almost imperceptibly, a gesture so small that only a parent would notice. The rage that had been simmering in Jonathan's gut since he'd heard rumors about his daughter's adjustment difficulties began to boil. He strode across the cafeteria floor, his human gait drawing curious stares from hundreds of alien eyes. Conversations died in his wake. The humans were still relatively new to the galactic community, barely 70 years since first contact, and their reputation preceded them: aggressive, emotional, unpredictable. Good, Jonathan thought. Let them remember. Nevaeh, he said softly, approaching her table. His daughter's head snapped up, her brown eyes widening. Dad? What are you doing here? Visiting my daughter. He sat down across from her, deliberately taking up space in that empty zone. How's lunch? Nevaeh glanced down at her tray, a selection of protein synthesizers and vitamin-enriched gel packets that looked utterly unappetizing. It's fine. Looks like you're enjoying it by yourself. Dad? How long has this been going on? Nevaeh's jaw tightened, a trait she'd inherited from him. It's not a big deal. How long? Since the 3rd week, she admitted quietly. After I won the zero-gravity physics competition, some of the Thexian students said I cheated. That humans are too primitive to understand spatial mechanics naturally, so I must have used banned neural implants. Jonathan's hands clenched beneath the table. And the school administration? They investigated. Found nothing, obviously, because I didn't cheat. But the reputation stuck. Now everyone thinks humans are either cheaters or too aggressive to be around. As if to punctuate her words, a group of Vorash students floated past their table, their translation collars carrying their whispered conversation. Heard humans still eat dead animal flesh. Violent evolutionary history. Their planet is still recovering from their own nuclear conflicts. Jonathan stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the polished floor. The sound cut through the cafeteria like a blade, and suddenly every eye was on him. Listen up! His voice, trained by years in Earth's diplomatic corps, carried to every corner of the vast room. The translation algorithms built into the cafeteria's architecture rendered his words in 47 languages simultaneously. I'm Jonathan Reed, human ambassador to the Zentaran sector, and that's my daughter you've all been ostracizing. Uncomfortable silence. Thousands of alien students suddenly found their meals fascinating. You think humans are violent? Primitive? Too aggressive for your enlightened society? Jonathan's voice was steel wrapped in ice. Let me educate you about human history. Yes, we fought wars. Yes, we nearly destroyed ourselves. But you know what we did that none of your species can claim? We survived our own worst instincts. He began walking through the cafeteria, and the crowd parted before him like water. The Thexians avoided nuclear war because you achieved space flight before atomic fission. The Vorash never had conflict because your species is psychologically incapable of violence. The Quarite exist in collective consciousness. You literally cannot disagree with each other. Jonathan's eyes swept across the alien faces. But humans? We had to choose peace. Every single day we choose cooperation over conflict. And that choice, made in the face of our own capacity for destruction, makes us stronger than any species born into harmony. He turned back to Neve, his voice softening but still carrying to every corner. My daughter didn't cheat. She won because humans have spent 10,000 years developing problem-solving skills in hostile environments. She won because human children are taught to think creatively, not just memorize algorithms. She won because she's brilliant, and instead of celebrating that brilliance, you isolated her out of fear and prejudice. Jonathan returned to Neve's table and sat down, meeting his daughter's eyes. They were shining with unshed tears, but her spine was straight with pride. So here's what's going to happen, Jonathan continued, his voice dropping to a conversational level that somehow still reached every listener. Anyone who wants to know what humans are really like can start by sitting with Neve. Talk to her. Learn from her. Because isolation and fear, that's the primitive response. And I thought this was supposed to be an enlightened institution. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a young Quarite, barely old enough for school by their species' standards, floated hesitantly toward their table. May I sit here? Neve smiled, gesturing to the empty seats. Please. The crystalline child settled across from them, their faceted surface catching the light. I wanted to talk to you after the competition. Your solution was beautiful, but everyone said— I know what they said, Neve interrupted gently. But I'd rather talk about your approach to the problem. The way you calculated gravitational shear was really elegant. As the Quarite child brightened, literally glowing with pleasure, more students began to approach. Tentative at first, then with growing confidence. A Thexian. 2 Vorash. A species Jonathan didn't even recognize. Jonathan stood, preparing to leave his daughter to her new social circle. But Neve caught his hand. Thanks, Dad. He squeezed back. That's what humans do, sweetheart. We fight for what matters. As he walked out of the cafeteria, Jonathan could hear the buzz of genuine conversation beginning around his daughter's table. The empty zone was filling. The isolation was breaking. And somewhere in the galactic bureaucracy, he knew, administrators were already preparing reports about the aggressive human ambassador who disrupted the cafeteria. Let them talk. His daughter was no longer eating alone. That was worth any diplomatic incident.